When you think of filmmaking, what comes to mind? How is the screenplay made? Is this based on an adaptation? What actors are in this? Or, more importantly, who made this? The auteur theory is a concept that is often thrown into film debate and discussion. Authorship is the idea that a director is the auteur of his or her film, with them being the true owner of the material. So, in other words, an auteur can be thought of as a filmmaker who left a trace of his or her own personality throughout the filmmaking process. The first auteurs that generally come to mind are usually Martin Scorsese, Steven Spielberg, Christopher Nolan, Quentin Tarantino, Alfred Hitchcock, and more. And yeah, those are all great examples, but I want to explore a different filmmaker. Someone who exudes creativity, originality, authenticity, and true authorship. Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright has been directing since the late 90s, with his first low-budget independent film, A Fistful of Fingers, releasing in 1995. He dabbled in television, with Spaced being his most notable series, and has directed 5 other feature films: Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, The World's End, and Baby Driver. Although he's mostly known for being a director, Wright is also quite the screenwriter. Aside from his own movies, all of which he has at least co-written, he also helped write Ant-Man and The Adventures of Tintin. Now, let's go back to authorship. What exactly does it mean to be an auteur? Well, that isn't the easiest question to answer. According to French film critic Francois Truffaut, who was one of the first to define authorship, true auteurs are directors who have distinct styles and themes in their films. He also argued that auteurs are directors who not only have their own style, but also write their own screenplays. American critic Andrew Sarris also supported Truffaut's theory, saying in his essay, The Auteur Theory Revisited, that a filmmaker's technical abilities and use of individuality were all assets that define a true auteur. Both Truffaut and Sarris were heavily criticized, including by film theorist Peter Wollen. In his essay, The Auteur Theory, Wollen says, in time, owing to the diffuseness of the original theory, 2 main schools of auteur critics grew up. Those who insisted on revealing a core of meanings, of thematic motifs, and those who stressed style and mise-en-scene. According to Wollen, an auteur is defined by the use of thematic motifs. He argues that a true auteur is able to blend multiple genres and films into various meaningful themes with less emphasis on style. These are just a few arguments on authorship, but there are many varying opinions. Some flat out disregard auteur theory in general, while others heavily argue the merits of authorship. In my opinion, I think Truffaut and Sarris said it best when defining authorship. True auteurs are ones who write their own scripts and have a distinctive style, one so rich and unique that the audience can immediately tell who wrote and directed the movie. So, how does Edgar Wright fit in with all this? I believe that Edgar Wright perfectly exemplifies this theory on authorship. Here's why. Wright is arguably known for being a style over substance filmmaker. However, I think his use of style actually packs a lot of substance. Visually, there's a lot that Wright has up his sleeves that he uses in virtually all his films, including, but not limited to, matching scene transitions.
Wallace, how do you do that? Wallace!
Shot reverse shot switches.
Do you read her blog?
I'm sorry, you were saying about me?
I mean, I've never gone out with anyone so talented.
Action synchronized to music. And pan transitions.
Can I get back to you on that?
Wright can make an ordinarily boring transition into something so memorable. He alters traditional filmmaking shots and editing by thinking outside the box and incorporating his own personality into his films. This is exactly what Truffaut and Sarris mean when they argue that auteurs have a unique style. Alongside visuals, Wright uses each frame as a playground to bring something interesting in a sight. As a result, his use of mise-en-scene is another reason he's a true auteur. Mise-en-scene is a French term describing the arrangement of everything that appears on screen. In the article Teaching Mise-en-Scene Analysis as a Critical Tool, Tricia Welsch references Louis Gianetti's textbook, Understanding Movies. According to Gianetti, there are 15 elements that comprise mise-en-scene, such as lighting key, shot and camera proxemics, angle, color values, framing, and staging positions. Edgar Wright is a master of mise-en-scene. He knows how to incorporate all 15 elements into each frame throughout his filmography. The opening credits scene in Baby Driver is the perfect example of Wright's killer usage of mise-en-scene. The entire scene, along with the whole film, is choreographed to music. Right after the title disappears, Baby starts walking through the street. While on first viewing this may seem pretty mundane, it's anything but that. In the background, the lyrics to the song playing can be seen somewhere in the shot. All of this is done in one take, and he frames everything in the shot perfectly so that each lyric can be seen without it being too obvious. As if that wasn't enough, after Baby first notices Deborah, the gray heart in the background also changes to red. It's truly incredible how much attention to detail Wright puts into painting each frame. Although these small tidbits could just be considered Easter eggs, there are other mise-en-scene elements that Wright incorporates. For example, the use of color and costume design in Scott Pilgrim conveys a lot of meaning. Envy and Todd's white costumes imply prestige. Ramona's unpredictability is exemplified by her changing hair color. And each X's costume have the numbers that represent what X they are. And this is barely scratching the surface. Aside from visual aesthetics, Truffaut believes that the best auteurs also write their own screenplays. Well, Wright does exactly that. As mentioned earlier, he is a co-writer on all of his films, most frequently with Simon Pegg, and Baby Driver was the first movie he wrote entirely on his own. So why is it important for directors to write their own scripts? Screenwriting is a fundamental and often overlooked aspect of filmmaking. Directors who write their own screenplays have a better understanding of the characters, plot, and overarching themes. As a result, it helps directors craft their vision even better. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is Wright's biggest exception, as it was co-written with Michael Bacall, not Simon Pegg, and it's also based on another source material, the graphic novel series written by Brian Lee O'Malley. Now, I know what you're thinking. Silly Jacqueline, how could Edgar Wright be the auteur of Scott Pilgrim if he isn't even the original creator? And yeah, that's a fair point. But regardless of source material, Wright still co-wrote the screenplay and integrated his own personality and signature film style within Scott Pilgrim. At the end of the day, it still feels like an Edgar Wright movie. And that's the thing about Edgar Wright. There's something so unique about Wright's style that just gives me a sense of euphoria. The way he treats every frame oozes with that distinctive Wright flavor. He knows how to engage viewers into his movies so they feel the same way when they watch any of his films, regardless of genre. Wright fully pushes the boundaries of filmmaking and innovates each genre he puts his hands on. His creativity and ingenuity are what make him a great, authentic filmmaker. Wollen believes that a director who uses the same motifs across films is considered less of an auteur. In Wright's case, some could argue that his constant use of visual quirks become uninspired after 5 films. And yeah, there are aspects underneath all of Wright's films that utilize the same signature properties and visual habits. However, just because he doesn't have the deepest, most thematic motifs in his films doesn't mean he isn't an auteur. In fact, to me it means the opposite. Because he has a distinctive visual style, that's what makes him a true auteur. He knows how to blend his own personality and quirks into multiple genres: a zombie apocalypse, a buddy cop story, a comic book adaptation, an alien invasion, and a getaway heist. All of these have been done before, but Wright breathes his own personality into each of these genres to create something original, something nerdy, something entertaining, something that makes him an auteur.